here is Frederick's mother.
We are going to investigate a little-known grave. We are going to look at the gravesite of Joseph Merrick, or, unfortunately, as he was better known, the Elephant Man. On August the 5th, 1862, Joseph Carey Merrick was born in Leicester in England, and he was described as a healthy child. When he was 5 years old, he had developed patches of lumpy greyish skin, which, ironically, his parents attributed to his mother being frightened by a stampeding elephant during her pregnancy. Merrick went on to develop more severe deformities as he aged, until various bony and fleshy tumours covered his head and body. Now, Merrick's childhood was relatively normal despite his infirmities, and he attended the local school. Sadly, Merrick's life took a turn for the worst when he was just 11 years old because, you see, his mother died of bronchial pneumonia. This hit Merrick very hard as he adored his mother. His father, who was a haberdashery owner, seemed to have remarried rather quickly after his wife's death. He had married their landlady less than a year later. At this point, Merrick left school to seek work, eventually finding a job rolling cigars in a factory. After 2 years, his right hand became so deformed that he could no longer do the work and was forced to leave. A peddler's licence was obtained for him by his father, and he sold his father's shop merchandise out on the street. His speech was so impaired by his deformities that at this point people were frightened of him and unable to understand him, so his efforts to sell the shop's merchandise was in vain. One day, when Merrick was just 17, his father beat him severely for not earning enough money, so Merrick went to live with an uncle briefly before becoming a resident at Leicester Union Workhouse. Merrick found workhouse life very hard, as many people did, but he knew he would be unable to find work elsewhere due to his deformities, so he knew he had no choice but to stay. In 1884, Merrick made his mind up that he could no longer tolerate the workhouse and he needed to escape. He came up with an idea to try and profit from his deformities. In an attempt to secure him a spot in the Human Oddities show, he approached a man called Sam Torr. Now, Sam Torr was the proprietor of the Leicester music hall called the Gaiety Palace of Varieties, and a great deal of success was soon had by Merrick as the Elephant Man, half elephant, in Leicester and Nottingham before he finally made his way to London in November of that year. On his travels, his deformities were concealed by a cape and a veil, but he was often harassed by mobs. The show was frequently visited by medical students and doctors interested in Merrick's condition, as the fair was located across the street from the London hospital. Eventually, Merrick was invited to the hospital by a surgeon named Frederick Treves. Upon examining Merrick, Treves found that his deformities had become extreme by that point. Tumours covered his body and his legs, and his hips were so deformed that he had to walk with a cane. Other than that, he was in good health. The Elephant Man exhibit was moved to Belgium in 1885 when Britain developed a distaste for freak shows. Merrick's manager there eventually robbed him of his life savings and abandoned him when the shows were only mediocrely successful. When Merrick arrived back in England in June 1886, he was mobbed by a crowd and taken into custody by the police at Liverpool Street Station in London. When they couldn't understand Merrick, they found Frederick Treves' business card on him and took him to the London hospital. According to Treves, Merrick's health had significantly deteriorated over the past 2 years. The hospital, however, was not equipped to care for incurables like him, so Merrick was once again left to fend for himself. However, a man called Carr Grom, who was the chairman of the London hospital, could not find another hospital to treat Merrick. In the Times, he published a letter explaining Merrick's case and asking for help. Several rooms in London Hospital were converted into living quarters for Merrick in 1887 as a result of Grom's letter that prompted a sympathetic public outpouring and sufficient donations. While at the London Hospital, Merrick's condition continued to worsen despite his newly found support system. Merrick died laying on his back on his bed on April the 11th, 1890. For his entire life he had slept sitting up with his head resting against his knees because of the size of his head. Merrick was initially thought to have died of asphyxiation after his head crushed his windpipe, but decades later it was realised that he died of a crushed or severed spinal cord after his head fell back due to positioning on the bed. He was only 27 years old. After Merrick's passing, Treves had a plaster cast made of his body and preserved his skeleton, which had been kept on permanent display in the collections of the London Hospital. However, a little-known fact was that his soft tissue was buried, and on the 5th of May 2019, author Joe Vigor-Mongoving, excuse the pronunciation if it's wrong, discovered that Merrick's soft tissue was actually buried in the City of London cemetery. She found his grave and had it marked.